Hey guys, hope you're all well. Dan Trevidi here. So I am doing a video, as promised, about what this week represents to me. This week, 10 years ago, was probably one of my lowest points. And I'm going to talk to you about what I went through and how I got to that point to make me so low, and where I am 10 years on. Hopefully some of you have seen a post that I put on Facebook with loads of little images that represents things that are important to me and things that I've achieved over the last couple of years. That make, for me, the measuring stick of where I was and where I am now. So let's start. Let's go back 10 years ago to this week in 2009. So I was 18 months in from starting a business, a retail business, and it started really well. I think we had at our peak 7 or 8 members of staff. The sales were going really strong, and some of the best months I was earning more in a month than I had done in a whole year in my previous job. I was 23 when I started it, but at this point, 24, and yeah, I'd got to a point where I wasn't making any money. The rent was really high. I'd negotiated it down to a 50% rent, but it was still significant. City centre prime retail. The rates bills were really crippling. They were more than the rent that I was paying. And it was in the mobile phone sector. And in the mobile phone sector, I don't know if any of you are aware, but when you sell something, you don't forget about it. If someone don't pay their bill for 12, 18 months, you get something called a clawback. And the market that I was targeting was the market that was being hit by the recession, so the clawbacks were coming thick and fast. So every time I opened my doors, I was walking into a negative balance. So it wasn't a very nice place to be. It eventually got to the point this week where I was in that shop on my own, and I was just praying for things not to come up that would cost money. And I remember things like the fire alarm system would create an error code, and that 300 quid to get someone out was 300 quid that I didn't have. But by this point, I'd already moved into my parents' spare bedroom. So I was living in their spare bedroom. I built up a couple of properties, all in negative equity at this point, all more, the mortgages were higher than the rent was coming in. So I had no income coming in, a mountain of debt, and that debt was getting bigger basically every day and every week. And it got to the point where I couldn't pay the rates bills, I couldn't pay the rent, I couldn't pay myself. So I decided to shut that shop up and try and recover without costs mounting up. So living at my parents' house, I had to close my business. And like I say, 18 months prior to that, it was absolutely flying. And as a young guy, to start something in a sector which I'd come from, there was a lot of eyes looking on me, so it was very emotionally and a very hard pill to swallow. And things started to get even worse. So the UK was heavily in a recession. I couldn't get a job to pay really what I needed or anywhere near what I was earning for some time. And I really didn't know where to turn, and there was a shining light at the end of the tunnel, because I just met a girl, and she became my wife today, and that was the glimmer of sort of hope really in all of my darkest hours that I was hanging on to, was seeing Charlotte. But being a guy with a new girlfriend, with no money, with a really nice car that had a crap windscreen in, that didn't have any fuel in it because I had no money to put in it, and I couldn't get a job, I didn't know where to turn. So the only thing that I had going for me was that I had a load of stock, which I'd taken from my business, shoved it in my parents' garage, that I potentially could try and sell. So I went knocking on the doors of the pawn shops, the cash converters, those sorts of things, and I couldn't really get anything for the stock. So the only thing I could do was load up my car, which had a really small boot, and drive to the car boot sales on a Sunday morning. And there I started to sell things, and I don't know if I made a profit, but I definitely started to inject some cash, some much needed cash into my pocket. And my living life was Monday to Friday, absolute bare essentials. I would stay at home. Charlotte would come and visit me at home, and we would watch TV and what have you. And then on the Sunday morning, I would get up early, go to the car boot, start selling all of this stock. So then on the Sunday afternoon, evening, I could treat Charlotte, and I could take her to a Pizza Hut. We're both big pizza fans. And that was how we became close, and that was my first step on getting out of the hole that I was in. My parents were a big help as well. The one bill that was really knocking on my door, that wouldn't take any form of negotiation, that I couldn't put off any further, I couldn't pay off with a credit card, was the rates bill, which they lent me the money to pay off, and I did eventually pay them back. So, but that was the bit of help that they got, and obviously giving me a roof over the head and letting me eat all their food. So I started to really reevaluate where I was. I was 24, loads of ambition, but even more debt. Now, I very nearly gave up, and over the course of the next few years, it always entered my mind that I had given up and I was just a means to an end, really. But at this point, I thought, right, I need to get a job, and I need to start earning some money, because I can't do anything else. I'm finding it really hard. So I decided to start applying for jobs, and I heard of a manager's job at a retail sales environment. I won't name the company because I'm about to slag it off. But I got a job, and it was a really high paying job, really high pressured, and God, did they want their pound of blood. But I didn't care. And I jumped in as a manager, and I remember getting my first paycheck. I think after tax it was about £3,000. And I remember opening it up at my parents' house, and my mum gave me a hug, because that was the first little bit of light that I could start to, pay off some debt, start to live a little bit, and not live off one credit card to the other, which most of them were now maxed out by that point. And I started to look where it had gone wrong for me. So I bought my first property when I was, I think, 20, maybe 21. I think it was 20. And even though I got everything you can imagine wrong, I still made money. And when I got to my last property before I started this retail business, I refinanced. I still own that property today, but I refinanced, and instead of buying another property, I moved across and I started a business in the retail sector. And that, for me, even though I learned a lot, even though it was the journey to meeting my wife, so I would never change anything. And I think the lessons that I learned in that journey have helped me be put in the position I'm in now. But that was fundamentally where I went wrong. If I'd have kept going in property, things might have been very different. They might have been a lot better. They may have been a lot worse. I may have not survived the credit crunch and the recession. But that, for me, was the point. And I deep down, I knew that retail business was not the most risk-averse way to invest my money. So I learned from that point that if my gut tells me something, I should go with it. So anyway, fast forward. So I've had to shut the shop. I'm now doing car boot sales every Sunday, paying for Pizza Huts. I'm now able to start putting fuel in my car. I'm start to drive to job interviews, and then I took this job with the retailer. I realised that because I had no money, no savings, a mountain of debt, I had no real family members who were wealthy that I could go calling upon to borrow money, nor did I want to. I realised that I needed to get back into property, and I'd been looking for different business opportunities far and wide, but I needed to look for something more local because I was a local guy. I was born and bred in one location, and really that would give me the edge if I could find something local, because you can't take away the history that you've got and the experience and the contacts and the people that you know. So, but I had to become mortgageable first. So I got this job, and it was a horrible job, horrible company to work for. They would teach you how to sell certain things like PPI, and they would use examples about how their own managers didn't have PPI, and then when they got cancer, they had to use their savings to sustain them because this company didn't pay sick pay. All these things, horrible company, but it was a means to an end. It was a job that paid me a wage, and I conflicted with how they did things. I was forever ever, clashing with them. But I learned as a 24, then becoming a 25-year-old guy, going up against people twice my age, telling me what to do, even though I knew deep down it was the wrong thing to do. I knew that my position, I had to have that job. I needed that income. But from a moral compass, I wasn't going to back down. But eventually, we did come to headers more than once, and we argued, me and the area manager, and we eventually parted ways. So I jumped from jobs to a few other jobs, knowing that I needed to get my debt down and I needed to become mortgageable. And eventually I did, and I got a really good job working for a brewery, great company, great job. And if any learning from those guys is that if you treat people really well, they will do the absolute best for you. And I did the best for that company. But by this time, fast forwarding now a couple of years ahead, I'd been doing things in the background. So my car boot sailed, my stock had dwindled down, but my drive to sell items hadn't. So I started buying things like containers loads of returned stock or seconds or discontinued stock from people like Argos and Homebase. Never good when your phone rings when you're doing a video. Where was I? So yeah, this 40-foot container. And I remember it was coming on the Saturday, and I'd paid for the stock on my credit card, and I think I paid for the Arctic lorry driver on a credit card as well. And I remember having a drink with one of my oldest friends on the Friday night, and I said, "Look, I've got to go. I've got to be up early. I've got an Arctic full of a 40-foot Arctic coming full of stock and furniture, and I've got to offload it by hand. So I better go." And he said, "No, stay for one more drink, and I'll help you in the morning." And so I did. I stayed for one more drink, and in the morning, true to his word, he came over and he helped me. And this Arctic lorry turned up, and it was literally a container full of damaged, old furniture, flat-packed furniture. So it was everywhere. Bits of wood, bits of cardboard. It was a real mess. And my mate, I looked at him and his face, the dread on him. But he helped me unload it. We handballed everything off. It took absolutely ages. And in this little old warehouse that I had a leaky roof and was absolute health and safety disaster. Bits of metal sticking out that you'd smash your head on that I was renting for 20 quid a week. We loaded it in there. He went away, and I began trying to piece it all together. And I did. I managed to make some furniture, some TV cabinets out of it, advertise them on places like eBay. And in the end, I sold loads of items individually for making thousands of pounds, and then I sold a load of the stock that I'd managed to compile that was finished units to a guy from Liverpool. He came and collected it. And then eventually all of the loose stuff that really had no value, a guy that refurbs boats came and took the whole lot from me. And I made money from that one deal. So I decided to start doing that, but not in the same fashion. I started to buy then just seconds or not return stock, seconds or discontinued stock. I avoided the return stock because of the mess that it came in. And eventually I was doing that, and I remember being there one evening. It was winter, freezing cold. It was as black as anything. I couldn't see anything. All I could hear was the rats and the mice chewing away at things and running around. It was horrible. But eventually I earned enough money to start to progress and pay for things like deposits. And then I was able to get a mortgage because I'd cleared some debt and had a really good job with a good salary. So I all of a sudden became a tick box for the lenders. And it was then that I decided to start buying property. But I bought property for me to live in. And I knew if I bought somewhere to live in that I could add value to, that was also in a market that I could potentially rent to, if I decided to move without selling that property, I could all of a sudden buy a property, live in it, and do the work up and add value, and then potentially rent it out. So that's what I did. I bought a property. I think it was a 95% mortgage. It may have been 100%, but I'm pretty sure we put something down. In the right location, but a complete nightmare of a house. And we refurbished it. And whilst I was refurbishing it, I was making it nice, but I was also making it rentable. And I knew where I'd grown up that there was this thing called the university. And the university had students, and the students needed accommodation. And that was my first real entry into the student market. I eventually refinanced that as we were moving onto a buy-to-let, and I was able to put the students in, and they were able to move in at the same time. I was able to move out, refinance, do a little bit of work, and those guys move in all within a space of a few weeks. I was so precise on the timing because I couldn't afford to pay for 2 mortgage payments, and the overlap meant that that I didn't. So it was really tight, but it did work. And eventually, when the students started to pay their rent, I realised that the rent after the mortgage was half of my take-home salary. So this was where I needed to get to be. This is where I needed to go. So I carried on, and I made myself mortgageable, and eventually I sold that property and I made a big profit, and I used those funds to buy more properties. And eventually I got to 6, maybe 7 properties over the next few years, and come 2014 I'd run out of cash. But because I'd been so active in the market, and I'd learned how to really maximise the student market, that I was offering what I considered a premium product, I knew that I had everything to make this work, just not cash. And when I got offered a deal that I didn't have the money to buy, I started to look for different ways to raise the funds to buy properties. And this, in 2014, early 2014, this is when I started to look beyond what I'd always done previously. And I'd always done what I thought was the only way to buy a property. Save money, buy property, refurbish it, sell it, refinance. And speak and listen to my parents, who were also at this stage, they had a couple of properties. But when I made the shift, and when I found out about things like joint ventures, rent to rent, investors, all of these different things, I became like a sponge. I couldn't get enough of it. By this time, I probably never read a book in my whole life, all the way through. And I must have read 6 or 7 books within months. I just couldn't get enough information. I knew that what I was doing was going to be the thing that took me away from the rat race. And as I found different ways, and I read different books to how to do things, I started to put it to the test. And eventually I decided to start networking, because one thing that was consistent in the message of all these books was, you must get out there, you must talk to people. And I'd always been a bit like a closed book. I didn't want to talk to anyone what I was doing. I didn't want to give away the secret. How wrong was I? At my very first networking event, some people had the opportunity to stand up for 30 seconds, I think it was, and talk a little bit about themselves. Now, I hated talking in front of people. I used to get in, horrible sweats. I used to, fumble my words. But I thought, in for a penny, in for a pound. I'm here. I've paid 20 quid to get here. I'm going to make the most of it. So I stood up, put my hand up, stood up, 30 seconds about me. And at that event, in the break, someone came and collared me. And he said, look, I'm interested in getting into property. I've just retired from an MD role. And we decided to do a joint venture together. But at first, I really didn't want to do it. Even though I'd read about it, I thought, no, I'm just going to try this rent-to-rent thing, or I'm going to try a different way of doing it. I didn't want to do a joint venture. One, I didn't want to share what I was doing. Two, I was so nervous because why would anyone want to put all of the funds into a deal and let me run it? And what happens if I get it wrong? I knew what I was doing was successful, but I wasn't sure if I wanted to do it. And I started asking the people closest to me, and this is where I was going wrong. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And I was asking the people around me the same types of questions, or different questions, but getting the same answers back. So I decided, do you know what? I'm going to try this, but I'm going to do it my way. So I sat the chap down, we had a coffee, and I said, look, this is my market, this is my strategy, so you put the funds in, but this is what's going to happen, and you're going to be silent, and I'm going to manage the whole thing. And I said, and this is going to be the worst case scenario, and that's what we're going to hang our hat on. And he agreed to it. And we completed the purchase, and within 2 weeks in December 2014, that house was rented, and I was overachieving, which I knew I was going to do, but not what we promised. And the investor was so happy, he was happy to go again. We ended up buying 7 properties together, myself and that investor. But I knew at that point that this was what I was going to do. I had the product, and I now had the strategy to bring the two together. I just didn't have a brand. I had a company, DT Norfolk Property, which is probably about as creative as I could get. And I thought, no, I need to have a brand that represents everything that I'm doing. This is not just another property sourcing company, because we don't source and sell properties. We do joint ventures in one sector, in one location, and I run everything. So I knew what I was offering was actually quite unique, even though it looked very similar to what everyone else was doing. And at the time, there was a hell of for every one person doing the right thing, there was 10 doing the wrong thing. So I thought, well, people mustn't get into this with the intention to do the wrong thing. They must just get to a point where the lines get quite murky, and eventually they end up doing the wrong thing. So I thought, well, this is a good place to start for my brand. So I was sitting in the office in this house, actually, and I was thinking, what can I use? What can I call the brand? And you can't write this stuff, can you? But Grace, my eldest little girl, very young at the time, she must have been 18 months, maybe not even that. And she came waddling in, and she said, Daddy, what you doing? I said, I'm doing some work. And she sort of looked at me. So I put her up on my knee, and I was talking to her about properties and about dividing this room into this bedroom, and solicitors and a pain and the lenders, all these various things. And she just looked at me with her lovely little eyes, and she had no idea what I was talking about, but she was just so intent and listening. And I thought, well, that has to be my measuring stick. Regardless of what happens, negatives, positives, bad, good, if everything that I do, I would be happy to put Grace on my knee and show her that this is the right way of doing things, I can't go wrong. And that will be my measuring stick. And if I have a measuring stick, we will never, ever do the wrong thing. We will always do the right thing. So I popped her down, and I thought, well, that's the brand. Grace and Charles, after my little boy. And that's the brand was born. I created the website very quickly. And Christmas 2014, because I had a break from my job, I started to really push it. And over the Christmas period, I agreed another 4 property deals with 4 investors, 4 single investors, 1 per property. And I knew that this was it. And I went for it. And I would not let anyone stop me. And I had a lot of negativity. People in the industry, the Facebook groups, the trolls, my family, very negative. But I went for it. Because no one is going to allow you an easy ride. And it's no one has the right to tell you what you can and can't do. You should just go with it. And I think in 2015, we bought 37 properties under that model. And fast forward, the company balance sheet, I don't need to tell you. I'm not going to tell you. You can go on Company's House and you can see it all for yourself. The numbers don't lie. I'm not going to be another person on a video telling you about how many millions we've made and how many millions of properties we've got and all this other rubbish. I don't need to. Go on Companies House. Check the figures out for yourself, and do it for anyone else who are promising the earth. For anyone who's looking to sell you any courses, go and check Companies House. And that is fundamentally how I went from being in huge amounts of debt, no income, nowhere to live. I was in my parents' place, to effectively where we are right now, which is Grace Charles Property has a board of 4 directors. It has other shareholders. It has multi-millions of pounds worth of property. We play in 4 different sectors. Students is still a big part of what we do, but it's not the only part. We like land, we like developments, we like commercial property. Our very own offices is in a commercial conversion where we bought the property and we converted the floors above into flats, and we've now got the ground floor as our office, right through to pubs. And that's just concentrating on our local market, because the one thing that we've stayed true to is staying local. Most of our portfolio is within 5 miles of where I live. And because of all of what's been going on, and because we've stuck to our values, our measuring stick, doing the right thing by people, it doesn't go right every single time, but when it goes wrong is the true measure of you as an individual and how you deal with things. And I'm a big believer in that. Money is a great way to get the true personality behind someone out of it, regardless of what people say. When money is involved, that shows you who they are. And I'm a great believer, and I have done, and I've proved it, and I've even written articles about it, that when we've had to put our hand in our pocket and see a deal right or an investor right, we've done it. And even though it loses money on that one project, overall, you know, I can sit here and look at anyone in the eye and tell them that we've always done the right thing, regardless of the circumstances. And even today, we have really tricky situations, really problematic projects that we will always see right, and we will always do right. And because we're not directly focused on where we make the money and how we make the money in every single circumstances, don't get me wrong, making a profit is essential and it's fundamental to a great business. But not everything that I do right now is, right, I'm going to make money out of that. We host a free networking event. We raise money for charity. We do not make any direct money out of it. It actually costs us money. I sit down and I will talk to anyone over a cup of coffee in our office if they need any help. We do not charge for that. We do not offer mentorships. I don't charge anyone for any training. We just do it because it's the right thing to do. Because nothing negative can come from doing the right thing. And what I've learned is that swings and roundabouts, it always comes back to help you. And some of the times when I've needed some help, those people that I've helped have come back to help me. And that's how we do things. And so where are we today? So it's not all sort of golden roses. It's not all good. We do have, like I say, problematic projects. The stress is something that no one ever tells you that you'll have. The amount of debt when you're working with lenders on development projects, and they turn around and they don't release funds for that page, so you have to fund it yourself, is all things you have to consider. And that's all things you have to take with the good. And anyone that tells you anything differently is I think, feeding you a load of rubbish. All of this rubbish about buying properties for a penny and on options and all of this, they're all great strategies to use, but that's all they are. They're strategies, they're tools in your belt. You're never going to buy a property for a penny. And if you think you are, it's just crazy. You've got legal fees involved. You've got what happens when things go wrong, refurb budgets that overspend. All of these things you've got to take into consideration. But if you bring it all the way down, if you always do the right thing, nothing negative can come from that. So anyway, I've waffled on for far too long. I had to break the video up because someone called me. That's my video. That's my story, I guess, of where I was and where I am today. And that's it. I'm going to try and do more videos. I know I say it on every single video. I'm going to try and do more videos with more content and more specifics for people to use and hang their hat on and go out there and use. So if you are interested, please hit the subscribe button and hit the notification so you get the emails as soon as I upload a new video. There's a link in the description below for my Facebook page and my Instagram. I tend to put pictures on there every other day, or stories or videos about some of our projects. So if you're interested in the projects that we're doing, you get the up-to-dates on those two platforms. If you've got any suggestions about this video or any other videos that you would like me to do, please feel free to put them in the comments or send me a private message. But that's it from me. So I hope you're all well. Have a great day, and I'll catch you all very soon. Thank you.